to deliver her opening remarks and reflections as we begin this afternoon's program. Ms. Mdezi, please join me on the stage.
Thank you very much, Candice. Ministers, deputy ministers, heads of delegations from G20 countries, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is such a pleasure to be here in the middle of the African bush with so many people from all over the world among G20 participants. Advocate Mutibi stole my notes because the remarks he's just made were those that the B20 sent me here to make. Of all of the G20 working groups, I would say this is the one that the B20 has worked together with the closest. And in my mind, the work of the Integrity and Compliance Task Team is literally the braid that threads all of the other task forces together. Simply without the integrity in systems, the work that we've been doing in this B20 process and in prior ones would come to naught. So let me therefore extend a real hearty thanks for welcoming us here to be part of this side event together with the G20. And I say so on behalf of the B20 South Africa team, all of them sitting over there, and I'm sure you'll hear from a few of them in the afternoon. I think it is actually from our side an honor to stand alongside the G20 working group on anti-corruption work to pursue our shared mission, which is one, to strengthen transparency, accountability, and trust across global systems. As many of you know, the B20 operates through, as I said, a number of task forces focusing on many critical pillars that the global business community finds either will give them the opportunity to help grow economies or a hindrance to the work that we do. So to spotlight integrity and compliance this afternoon as a cornerstone of our work, as I said, has been a very, very important part of this phase of the work of B20 South Africa. In how we have portrayed this topic, we have gone beyond integrity just as a value, although it's an important value, we would not gainsay that. But from my perspective and from the perspective of the B20, it is absolutely the foundation of responsible business. It underpins every decision, every partnership, and every policy. A CEO and a leadership team in a private sector organization that fails to engender trust in its employee complement doesn't go very far in achieving its missions and ambitions. Without integrity, there's no trust. Without trust, sustainable growth becomes well nigh impossible. So we're here this afternoon as a B20 to offer private sector inputs and insights, to forge partnerships that reinforce the anti-corruption systems that the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group has worked so tirelessly over the past year to wrestle with. We believe in a world where business operates with transparency, fairness, and accountability, and we are committed to building that world. We do believe that public-private collaboration is essential, and there we are in total agreement with the SIU head that in coming together, there's many, many disparate attempts in isolated islands that are wrestling with this topic, but where we will ultimately overcome is when everybody comes together in a collaborative initiative such as what we are forging here. Governments, of course, do set the standards. We're not confused about that. but you do need business to bring along the innovation, the reach, the scale to make change happen, to make it real, and to make it last. B20 South Africa presidency is deeply committed to fostering this collaboration across all of the G20 business community and G20 nations. We thank you again for the opportunity and encourage open exchange and dialogue throughout today's session, united by a shared sense of purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ngezi, for that powerful message on leadership and trust. We now move on to our keynote address, one that brings technology, ethics, and trust at the very heart of today's discussions. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce Ashley Theophanidis, the Deputy Chair of the B20 Integrity and Compliance Task Force, to deliver the keynote address on the Code of Trust, unlocking the power of smart technology to protect whistleblowers. Ashley.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to be here today to share with you the power of technology in advancing anti-corruption strategies through the lens of the B20 Integrity and Compliance Task Force. Starting this session, it is important to recognize that advancing whistleblower protection through the integrity by design is a matter of compliance and a foundational pillar for sustainable economic development, ethical business conduct, and trustworthy governance. I would like to begin by recognizing the individuals and organizations whose efforts have been incredibly important in planning this session. I would like to extend my gratitude to the South Africa G20 presidency. Your commitment to upholding integrity and accountability in the fight against corruption sets a strong foundation for our collective efforts. I would also like to express my deep appreciation to the B20 leadership and the B20 Secretariat. This platform is important in allowing the Integrity and Compliance Task Force to advocate for the policy recommendations that can help drive meaningful change at a global scale. I'd also like to take this opportunity to extend my thanks to the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group for your important role in the processes of the Integrity and Compliance Task Force, as well as including the Integrity and Compliance Task Force in your processes. The fact that we've had an opportunity to connect with you at your meetings during this presidency is deeply humbling and a privilege. This event further strengthens our collaboration and shared commitment as the G20 and B20. This achievement is not only demonstrate what's impossible when forces are joined, but also establishes a standard for how the G20 and B20 can further collaborate within the future. Your knowledge, collaboration, and focus to upholding the highest standards of integrity have been instrumental in developing the policy recommendations that support a shared vision of transparent, accountable, and of course, resilient institutions. The insights provided by the G20 Anti-Corruption Group have strengthened the policy paper and reinforced the importance of collective action in the global fight against corruption. Today's session alone is just another indication of how we continue to drive collective action. Thank you for your dedication in advancing these important priorities. It is a privilege to be joined by representatives from participating countries, international organizations, as well as members of civil society, the private sector, as well as pioneering technology innovators. Your diverse perspectives and focus are important for shaping effective and sustainable anti-corruption strategies. Your contributions enrich discussions and inspire progress. I also wish to recognize the efforts of the organizing and logistics team, the G20 presidency and the Integrity and Compliance Task Force knowledge partner. Your meticulous planning and seamless coordination has made this gathering possible. Thank you. As we focus on today's session, I'd like to give an overview of the process that was followed by the B20 Integrity and Compliance Task Force in the development of the policy paper, along with some of the recommendations that have emerged from it. The Integrity and Compliance Task Force was comprised of a set of broad and incredibly committed individuals. Firstly, our chair, Rueda Redfern, me as the deputy chair, our 11 co-chairs, and some of them are here today, as well as 165 task force members. We were supported by our knowledge partner, as well as a number of network partners who supported various perspectives, both from South Africa, from the African continent, emerging economies, developing countries, as well as other G20 countries. This collection of individuals and organization brought together vast perspectives, focusing on different industries, geographies, and of course, lived experiences. Now, collaboration among the local and global task force members, network partners, and other stakeholders played a key role in shaping the policy paper. We therefore went through a number of iterations. In particular, we had 5 iterations and 5 meetings that refined the focus areas and really allowed us to develop the recommendations. The task force members were invited to provide input on every version of the paper, and this was incredibly important to ensure that they contributed to the shared understanding, shared agenda, and then alignment around the final recommendations that were produced. And today I'll speak to one of those recommendations, which is encouraging the responsible use of technology in integrity and anti-corruption efforts. This may involve promoting the use of international frameworks that guide ethical technology practices in these areas and exploring the development of secure, inclusive, digitally enabled platforms for reporting suspected integrity breaches. Looking at unlocking the power of technology in order to advance anti-corruption strategies, digital technologies in particular, we've all heard a lot about generative AI, blockchain, big data analysis, and reporting platforms. All of these are transforming the landscape of corporate integrity, compliance, and anti-corruption efforts. These innovations offer unprecedented opportunities in order to strengthen internal controls, enhance transparency, detect irregularities in real time, as well as reduce the scope for discretionary decision-making that enables corrupt practices. It is clear that digital technologies offer powerful capabilities in order to enhance anti-corruption programs through proactive risk management, pattern analysis in vast data sets, as well as automated monitoring system that can operate continuously and at scale, and therefore enabling public and private organizations to automate these compliance monitoring system and potentially flag suspicious transactions in order to improve the effectiveness of due diligence processes. Transaction monitoring and anomaly detection provides part of the mechanisms in order to deal with corruption at a day-to-day basis and enables previously opportunities that weren't necessarily there in order to ensure that these capabilities, as technology advances, that this can be embedded and be within the reach of traditional compliance systems and be incorporated for the evolution of compliance systems over time. The Integrity and Compliance Policy Paper highlights that whistleblowing is a critical component of the integrity ecosystem. An effective protection of whistleblowers and ensuring that the handling of protective disclosures are central to promoting integrity and preventing corruption. The policy paper notes that secure digital whistleblower platforms have emerged as essential infrastructure for overcoming these barriers by offering anonymous, confidential, and user-friendly environments for reporting misconduct. I don't think we should underestimate the importance of making the systems simple to use to ensure that barriers that stop whistleblowers from reporting are removed as much as possible. Leveraging these digital technologies not only supports a transparent environment, but also serves as a substantial incentive for employees to come forward, thereby minimizing the risks associated with whistleblowing. The integration of these digital tools enhances the security, the anonymity of whistleblowers, and fosters a culture of transparency and trust, which of course encourages more individuals to come forward with crucial information without fear of retaliation. The protection of whistleblowers and other categories of reporting people is one of the key elements to better prevent, detect, and prosecute corruption. Establishing a robust whistleblower system is indispensable to encourage reporting and, of course, report and protect the people while ensuring integrity. The policy paper emphasizes that a proper whistleblower system plays an important part in the journey towards a fair and safe workplace, and that comprehensive protections for whistleblowers should ensure anonymity, confidentiality, safety, and support for individuals reporting misconduct. The Integrity and Compliance Task Force calls for embedding provisions in national whistleblower legislation and frameworks, including anti-retaliation protections, trauma-informed support systems, and intersectional safeguards. This, of course, will support further secure, anonymous digital whistleblower channels within both the public and private sectors, and embedding them in national anti-corruption strategies, compliance frameworks, as well as procurement systems. Looking forward, it is important that we unite behind these steps. According to the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners Occupational Fraud Report for 2024, 43% of occupational frauds were detected by a tip. Now, that is quite an interesting statistic, but when you layer that over with the fact that this is more than 3 times as many cases as the next method of detection. Whistleblowers are therefore the first line of defense against integrity breaches, therefore providing unique insights that may not have been accessible through audits as well as compliance review. However, there are significant barriers that remain. The 2024 EY Global Integrity Report found that 64% of board members and 57% of senior managers felt under pressure not to report misconduct. Further statistic that I personally find quite concerning is that 4 in 10 board members admitted that when an issue is reported, they themselves had faced retaliation or have even witnessed the adverse effects of someone else who reported misconduct through the organization's whistleblower mechanism. Further to this, The 2025 NAVEX Whistleblowing Incident Management Benchmark Report found that the median rate for retaliation incidents rose from 2.84% to 3.08%. Yet overall reporting of these matters remain incredibly low at a mere 18% when compared to overall substantiation rates at 46%. The data is clear. It highlights a challenge. Organizations should remain vigilant. They should foster safer and more transparent work environments. The Integrity and Compliance Task Force calls upon G20 governments to consider taking coordinated and concrete steps to establish and promote secure, anonymous, and inclusive digitally driven whistleblower platforms. The task force also urges the G20 to enhance and enforce comprehensive protections for whistleblowers, ensuring anonymity, confidentiality, safety, and support individuals that are reporting misconduct. This includes protecting all whistleblowers from retaliation and ensure that effective mechanisms are in place for reporting misconduct safely as well as confidentially. The Integrity and Compliance Task Force further urges the G20 to embed provisions in national whistleblower legislation and frameworks, including anti-retaliation protections, trauma-informed support system, and intersectional safeguards that will help to secure that everyone feels empowered and protected to report wrongdoing. Secure, anonymous digital whistleblowing channels should be promoted in both the public and private sectors and embedded in national anti-corruption strategies, compliance frameworks, as well as procurement systems. To help ensure accessibility and inclusivity, these whistleblowing platforms should be multilingual, especially in countries which have multiple official languages. This will again ensure that it is easy for people to report and ensures that an approach of true inclusivity is incorporated in the design and execution of these frameworks. It's important to encourage multi-stakeholder cooperation between governments, organizations, civil society, academia, and the media in order to build trust in the systems and ensure that there's adequate legal protections for whistleblowers. Continued collaboration and dialogue among stakeholders is needed in order to address these issues that are facing whistleblowers and to promote transparency and accountability worldwide. The Integrity and Compliance Task Force urges the investment in capacity building, training, digital literacy to enable potential whistleblowers and integrity officers to use these platforms effectively and safely. Internal audit functions should be delivered and developed and capacitated and strengthened to effectively investigate corruption cases. And the experiences should support the development of anti-corruption software. Technical individuals and professionals who are responsible for investigating whistleblower reports once they come in should receive multidisciplinary training in forensic investigations, digital forensics, cyber investigation techniques, data privacy, and evidence handling. By equipping investigators with the necessary skills, tools, and frameworks, the G20 can strengthen global enforcement capabilities and send a clear signal that there is commitment to transparency, accountability, and inclusive integrity systems. Now, in a digitally transforming world, the integration of responsible technology into integrity is a foundational governance imperative. By embedding ethics, inclusion, transparency, and human oversight into the very DNA of digital transformation, G20 nations can help to ensure that digitally driven whistleblowing platforms is upheld and not undermined and aligns to our moral values. Through a coordinated voice in the global digital governance, the G20 can build bridges of inclusion, integrity, and shared prosperity. To conclude, it is time to move beyond recommendations into implementation, building systems where every voice is heard, where wrongdoing is confronted and not concealed, and where integrity by design is the norm and not the exception. Advancing whistleblower protection through integrity by design is a technical challenge and a governance imperative. By championing integrity and compliance together, the way forward can be paved for a world where trust, cooperation, and prosperity are normalized. By moving together forward, we can help to ensure that the next chapter is one of transparency, accountability, and shared prosperity. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ashley, for that thought-provoking and certainly passionate keynote, which so clearly positioned technology as a guardian of integrity and a powerful ally of courage that can transform policy intent into practical, secure systems of trust. We're now going to transition to a fireside chat on the stage, and I am delighted to welcome the co-chair of the B20 South Africa Integrity and Compliance Task Force, Ms. Futhi Toba. Futhi, while you're taking the stage, to set the scene, together we will reflect on how we can empower the next generation of whistleblowers, guided not only by our technology, but by people, leadership, and culture. I think I'm going to need my glasses for this one, this fireside chat. Futhi, thank you for joining us. And I think to really set the scene and how we're going to explore technology, collaboration that strengthens systems globally, our discussion today is focused around and anchored in the B20 Integrity and Compliance Task Force recommendations. We're focusing on encouraging the responsible use of technology in integrity and anti-corruption measures. So perhaps we'll start with the B20 emphasized the need for the source and digital-driven technology in whistleblowing platforms. Why do you think this is such a need and priority in today's global economy?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this session. If I have to think about the response to that, I would like to frame it in two sessions. Firstly, there's no doubt that technology advancement has supported our daily lives immensely. Therefore, it's very important that we do not miss this opportunity to also use technology to help us against the fight of corruption. Also, the markets are so interconnected. So the ability to dictate, to respond to integrity breaches, such as your corruption, your fraud, your money laundering, harassment, discrimination, is also critical. So digital platforms, as we had earlier, because they are anonymous, they have confidentiality, they are user-friendly, can overcome these barriers, such as the fear of retaliation by those whistleblowers that come up. And then also they then become the essential infrastructure for governance and transparency. The second major area is around the whistleblowers themselves. We've heard from the presentations that whistleblowers play a major role in really surfacing issues of misconduct. And in the process, they play they pay a high price in terms of being victimized, losing their income, they live in fear, they suffer retaliation, being ostracized sometimes within the organizations that they are trying to assist as they, surface these ethical dilemmas. They suffer safety of their families and also physical threats. We can talk of many cases that we all know. And sometimes the disappointment is that they find themselves in a situation where people accept the status quo. And even their own colleagues in environments, they look at them and say, did you really have to talk about this? So as a result, you find that whistleblowers don't come up because they fear of their lives. So therefore, the issue around the digital use of digital infrastructure for us as the task force, it became important because we had to consider how do you better support the whistleblower to enable a culture of speak up in business, government, and civil society.
I think you make some excellent points because the conversation really is around beyond reporting. It's beyond just what the reporting requirements are. And so the question, I think, for us to consider is how do these platforms strengthen integrity systems by leveraging technology and inclusively digital-driven platforms as recommended in the B20 framework, going beyond just the reporting requirements?
Yeah, so we also have to recognize that even though our recommendation focused on the use of technology, at the heart of this issue is the culture. So organizations that are serious about creating a culture of speak up, they must ensure that they build strategies that makes the speaking up possible without that risk to personal life.
Yeah, and I think as we worked together closely in shaping and developing the policy paper and these, in fact, recommendations, we looked at case studies and practical steps of what government and businesses should take to accelerate the adoption. What, in your view, would be around those practical steps and touching a bit on the case studies that we explored?
Okay, so we have very good examples from different countries that we can look at. In fact, if we consider two of the examples, let me just find them quickly. Too many papers. I'll find my two case studies. So the one case studies relates to the UAE, where they're using digital strategies to assist them with the budgeting process. So they have effective budget allocation. They can trace where the money is gone. They can also trace whether the usage is as intended. And also through the use of AI, they are able to see whether there are anomalies in the allocations themselves. The second example that I love best is the Ghana example, where they have used technology in their public procurement system. As we all know that procurement is a hotbed for corruption. That system tracks procurement process, the whole entire chain, from the time when the bids are offered, and up until the conclusion of the supply chain, use that technology. And that has limited, really limited an opportunity for changing anything in the process and the corruption itself. But having said that, it's also important to really understand that organizations do have to focus on the culture of the organization. Because even those, it's one thing to think technology can do something, it's driven by humans. So if the culture within that organization doesn't respect, integrity or ethics, then you will find that that technology is what we normally call garbage in, garbage out. So we have to go back to the leadership, the tone at the top, leaders in organization acting ethically, so that the young people that are in that organization can see that ethical behavior as well.
And you touch on an important point in that response. The young people can see. And I think in us preparing, we unpack that a lot around the DNA. Do you want to maybe just speak on that?
I mean, it's very important that the future generation that will be the future whistleblowers are modeled by whistleblowers that are protected, that are in a system that there's accountability, there is law enforcement, there is protection for the whistleblower, and that encourages that reporting as well.
A closing reflection is, if you could implement one action today that we looked to advance integrity globally, what would you think that would be?
Let's put all of those criminals in jail. Collectively, we need to establish a secure and inclusive digital reporting system, and we have to pair that with the culture in organizations of honesty and integrity. And also, very important is how society as a whole also needs to be educated around how do they look at whistleblowers. It's, I have to say this because it really surprises me how even our reporting, you can sometimes feel that the person now, the way they report about a whistleblower is like you've let down the system, instead of helping the system. So the culture of that education, the training, the walking the talk from the leadership will always remain important.
I think that's a really good point to end on, and maybe to say that when business and government collaborate, it's when youth networks help share their stories, their tools and lessons, integrity will really truly become everybody's business.
Because definitely the next generation of whistleblowers will come from organization that chooses humanity over hierarchy.
Thank you, Fusi. Thank you for your wonderful insights and for sharing with us on your thoughts today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Your pen up.
My word.
Thanks again, Fusi. Thank you for sharing with us. I think we've come to just a few more items before we are due a well-deserved break. But I think that conversation really reminded us that integrity is not only a matter of systems, but of shared responsibility, where leadership, culture, and courage come together. We now turn to a critical session, which is implementing effective whistleblower frameworks, which will look at the mechanisms, policies, and international collaborations that turn into practice, And it's my honor to welcome Dr. Solomon, who will present the G20 Accountable Report findings on behalf of the G20 presidency. Dr. Solomon.
Going to go into depth because the report is available for everyone to have a look at it, and it was circulated a number of times. But I would like to thank the knowledge partners, the UNODC, the OECD, and especially the African Development Bank for the valuable assistance that they provided during this process. So, as introduction, I think this afternoon indicates clearly why we need to focus on whistleblowing. And we can move to the next slide to be on par with where I am. So the choice to pick the whistleblower protection mechanisms is exactly because it's central to promoting public and private sector integrity, but also supporting an open organizational culture and preventing and detecting bribery and corruption. Now, on the other hand, also whistleblowers play an essential role in exposing fraud, corruption, and other offenses, and sometimes even at their own personal safety. So the objectives of the report is twofold. In the one sense, to provide an overview of how far we are with the implementation of the 2019 G20 high-level principles for the effective protection of whistleblowers, but also then to share some of the country experiences in this regard. Now, going to the next slide, just to touch briefly on the methodology for the report. It's a self-reporting mechanism where countries had to demonstrate by completing an agreed-upon questionnaire the progress that they made towards their commitments and areas for improvement. And of course, the study also builds on information then that was retrieved based on previous questionnaires around the 2019 high-level principles and the UNODC questionnaire on good practices and challenges for the protection of reporting persons that were presented June 2025. Now, the key findings, and I think this is the most important part, 9 key findings. The one that there is significant progress in implementing the high-level principles around the substantive legal frameworks, to find that most G20 countries have comprehensive whistleblower protection laws. The scope of protected disclosures indicate that it even covers fraud, corruption, health and safety, and in some instances even environmental violations. And the protections often exceed or extends to persons beyond current employees. On the issue of good faith and reasonable ground, over half of the G20 countries require disclosures made in good faith and or reasonable belief, and a few countries only require reasonable belief that the disclosure is in public interest. So, looking at the reporting procedures, most of the G20 countries permit whistleblowing or whistleblowers to report directly to law enforcement or competent authorities without even exhausting internal channels, while some prefer internal reporting but allow external disclosures to prescribed entities, ministers, legal advisors, or media under exceptional circumstances. Around confidentiality and anonymous reporting, most countries mandate the confidentiality of whistleblower identity and report details. In terms of the protection against retaliation, all 21 countries prohibit retaliation that is in response to the whistleblowing report. And then also the remedies include compensation and reinstatement. Looking at the reinforcement or the enforcement institutions and evaluation, more than half of the countries have dedicated bodies to implement whistleblower protection, while some rely on multiple prescribed persons or regulators instead of one single authority. And in practice protections, we found that the data on whistleblower activity is uneven, and only a handful of countries provided data on this. And as such, it's one of the limitations in the report. Now, just the next slide is just a reminder on the high-level principles of 2019. There was 5 themes around or 5 pillars on the high-level principles. And this questionnaire, if we can move to the next slide, links the questionnaires with the high-level principles. And under Pillar 1, we can see that most of the G20 countries have legislative frameworks in place. Whistleblowers can report on misconduct, and then there's protections via standalone laws and policies in some countries and via multiple sources in other. If we move then to Pillar 2, the next slide, one will see that half of the surveyed countries report that their frameworks provide protection to reporting persons, and that may be beyond the termination of the work-based relationships, even during advanced stages of recruitment or contractual negotiations, and third persons associated with the reporting person. If we look then at Pillar 3, it's clear that the principles are aligned with UNCAC Resolution 10, the OECD Anti-Bribery Recommendation, and the OECD Recommendation on Public Integrity. Moving to Pillar 4, the finding is that the majority of countries prohibit retaliatory action. Many provide remedy for whistleblowers, and 2/3 of the respondents to question 15 in the questionnaire indicated that their whistleblower protection framework provides for the burden of proof to be shifted to the person who has taken detrimental action against the reporting person. If we look at Pillar 5, the main takeaway from this is that just over half of the countries indicated that their legal and institutional whistleblower protection framework establishes one or more dedicated agencies for implementing their country's whistleblower protection framework. And there's also periodic assessment and evaluation, where 6 countries indicated that their frameworks are assessed on a regular basis, ongoing in India, annually in Indonesia, the Republic of Korea, Portugal, and Spain, and every 2 years in France. And a number of countries also undertaken assessments of their frameworks with a view to improving the effectiveness. Then we can move to the next slide on the proposed future areas. The report also identified under the different pillars areas that can be considered for the future. And under Pillar 1, I'm not going to go into detail with each of these, but under Pillar 1, there's some suggestions around dedicated legal frameworks. Pillar 2, expanding of the coverage and clarifying good faith, reasonable ground standards. Pillar 3, around enhancing confidentiality and anonymous reporting, and then also addressing gender-sensitive reporting. Then if we go to Pillar 4, there's some options to explore under the shifting burden of proof and remedy improvements, and under Pillar 5, capacity building and resourcing, gaps in transition and developing countries, and then balancing data privacy and transparency, international cooperation and knowledge sharing, and enhancing evaluation, periodic assessments, and especially data on whistleblowing, because I think that was one of the clear findings, that there is not enough data relevant data to support actions taken to protect reporting persons. To conclude, countries have made significant advances in procedural safeguards, but also in provisions enabling direct reporting to competent authorities. Some countries have adopted robust remedies and protection against retaliation. And then there's still some challenges, and especially around limited data on whistleblowing reports and retaliation cases that impede actually full assessment of the effectiveness of frameworks. And then lastly, a reminder that by cultivating organizational cultures that foster trust and open reporting remains actually a critical dimension requiring sustained efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. We'll now have a presentation by Ms. Charity Njamonya from the African Union.
Thank you. Thank you, MC, for giving me the floor. And I'll just go through the presentation. You may wish to know that every year the African Union runs with a theme that is agreed upon with stakeholders. And for 2024, we were looking at whistleblowers mechanisms as effective mechanisms in the fight against corruption. So this afternoon, I'll be speaking to the results of the survey that was done. And this survey dwelt on the availability of laws and policies in African Union member states, as well as institutions and reporting channels. And then some questions also dwelt on the availability of funding, as well as cooperating partners on whistleblower protection. And then we looked at some challenges as reported, and then some recommendations and conclusions. So we did the survey among the 55 African Union member states, and like indicated, the questions basically emanated from Article 5 of the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption, which behoves state parties to adopt measures to protect informants. And while not all informants are whistleblowers, all whistleblowers are informants, and to that extent, the convention covers them. And the same article seeks to ensure that citizens report instances of corruption without fear of reprisals. So when we administered the questionnaire to the 55 AU member states, we received responses from 19 member states. Of course, we would have loved a situation where all the 55 member states responded, but I think when you look at the data that we got, I think it could be safe to say it's a fair reflection of what is happening on the continent. And from the survey results, you find that there are certain countries without any laws, no institutions, no any other mechanism with respect to whistleblower protection. And so for us, that is an issue, and even if it's only a few countries, we need to pay attention to them before we even start to think of effective implementation of whistleblower mechanisms. So with respect to what we found in terms of the laws and policies, we found that 6 of the member states who responded, they only had laws on whistleblower protection. And then 5 of them indicated that they didn't have anything, they had neither a law nor a policy on whistleblower protection. And then out of the 19, 4 countries only had policies, and then 4 countries had both laws and policies. Then when you look at institutions and reporting channels, 12 countries indicated that they didn't have designated institutions for whistleblower protection. And then 7 countries indicated that such institutions were available. And then some of these countries also indicated that though they didn't have designated institutions or specific institutions, most of these roles were assigned to the already existing law enforcement agencies. So, for instance, within a national anti-corruption agency, they would have a unit or division that takes care of whistleblower protection. And then on the channels of reporting, 15 countries indicated that they had anonymous reporting channels, while 4 countries indicated that they didn't have any anonymous channels. And then with respect to national budgeting and cooperating partners, 16 member states indicated that they didn't have a specific budget allocation for whistleblower protection, but whistleblower protection was already provided for within the law enforcement agencies' budget line as needed. And then with respect to cooperating partners, we had 9 member states who indicated that they didn't have any cooperating partners, while the other 9 indicated that they had some level of partnerships with respect to whistleblower protection. And then 1 member state out of those that responded didn't speak to this aspect. We also were able to condense some challenges that were reported by the different member states. And the first challenge pertains to the inadequate laws as well as institutional setups for effective protection of whistleblowers. And then the next challenge pertains to inadequate human, financial, as well as technical resources. And then the other challenge pertains to the bureaucratic hurdles on the reporting aspect, as well as seeking protection. And then the other key challenge that was reported on pertains to the lack of awareness and cultural perceptions among citizens. In fact, for some countries, they even have specific terms for whistleblowers, which are quite negative, and this actually doesn't encourage whistleblowing. So instead of being called names, people would rather they turned a blind eye to acts of corruption or suspected acts of corruption. So given the challenges that were highlighted, some of the recommendations that we distilled from the survey pertain to the development of legal frameworks for the protection of whistleblowers in member states that don't have such frameworks at the moment. And then there's also the aspect of technical assistance and provision of adequate resources for effective protection of whistleblowers. And then the other recommendation, which also has already come out prominently in other presentations before me, is the effective use of technology in the protection of whistleblowers. And then the other recommendation speaks to the need to advocate for increased awareness among citizens on the aspect of whistleblowing. And then the final recommendation pertains to strengthening institutions and reporting channels for whistleblowers and their protection. And from the survey that we did, it's clear that the whistleblower protection landscape revealed a mix of legal progress for some countries. They are doing extremely well. Then there are also significant implementation challenges, even where you find countries have the laws, they have the institutions, but with respect to actual implementation, it's still a challenge. And then the other one is the culture of fear that undermines vital anti-corruption efforts among the 19 countries that responded, and possibly perhaps some of those that didn't respond. So based on the responses, I think there's need to enhance whistleblower protection through the implementation of robust frameworks. And then arising out of that, the work of the AUABC currently with partners is focusing on coming up with whistleblower protection model law, as well as some guidelines. And through this, we seek to complement the work of the G20 anti-corruption working group, especially with respect to whistleblower protection. That brings the end of my presentation, and I wish to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Charity. We now will have a presentation by Louise Portis from the United ONDC, who present online.
I don't know if you can hear me. So UNODC calls for those witness protection programs to be opened, to be widened to other categories of reporting persons who are not necessarily participating into judicial processes, but because they report wrongdoing and especially corruption, they also may be in need of a physical protection and measures that are included in the witness protection frameworks. So the whistleblower protection framework should have a provision that allows this possibility and allow for the whistleblowers to be taken care, if I may say, by a witness protection program. So these are the main points to consider when we provide technical assistance to states parties. We provide those 4 main recommendations, if I may say. The first one is to have a dedicated framework for the protection of whistleblowers specifically. The second is to expand the scope of witness protection frameworks to allow absorbing whistleblowers and other reporting persons, establishing internal reporting and protection systems inside the workplace organizations, which is the key for an effective whistleblower protection, and adopting a wide range of protective measures that can be adapted to the daily life, to the life of each whistleblowers, who can all have a very specific case of retaliation. So in terms of technical assistance, I have to mention that UNODC is receiving an increasing number of requests for whistleblower protection. We already have more than 88 jurisdictions who have notified UNODC that whistleblower protection was a priority for them under the framework of the regional platform approach that UNODC has initiated since 2017. And in addition to the regional platforms, we also receive ad hoc requests all the time. So we have a growing number of requests, and we could see as well a progress in the technicality of the requests. Before the resolution 10/8, the requests were more on awareness raising and workshop on the importance of whistleblowers and how to provide protection to whistleblowers. But since the adoption of the resolution, we could see a progress with more technical requests for drafting support, like supporting states to draft laws, supporting institutions and anti-corruption authorities as well to establish or strengthening their internal reporting systems. So we had really a shift in the technicality of the request, and to respond to that, UNODC has developed its own expertise. We also develop knowledge products and tools. We are actually still developing some. And we also concluded some partnership agreements. So for instance, in Africa, we have an implementing partnership with the Platform to Protect Whistleblowers in Africa, also known as PLAF. And with them, we have been able to increase our capacity to respond to the growing number of requests in the African continent. Indeed, the African continent is actually the one continent for which we received the highest number of requests in proportion to the others. So we could see that this was a continent that is really in ebullition in terms of whistleblower protection, and we are very grateful to be part of this advancement of this work, and together with our partner to have the possibility and the honor to support a lot of countries in Africa and other regions, of course, in strengthening their whistleblower protection systems. So just a last word, as we are in October and we are organizing our Conference of States Parties, I just wanted to inform you that our next Conference of States Parties is going to take place in December in Doha, in Qatar. And we will have a lot of things happening in the area of whistleblower protection and what we call now the corruption detectors. The first thing that we may have a resolution on the importance of journalists to combat corruption. And we'll also have a thematic day on uncovering corruption. So this thematic day will have a full morning dedicated to whistleblower protection and the progress made in developing frameworks. We will also launch a new toolkit to develop whistleblower protection frameworks. This toolkit is the continuation of the international study we presented in June. But we will also have a focus in the afternoon on building an ecosystem to uncover corruption, bringing together whistleblower protection, obviously, but also the protection of journalists, civil society organizations, law enforcement, and how all these partners, all these stakeholders can and should work together to to uncover corruption, report safely, and participate to more integrity, more transparency. So all the participants to the COSP are welcome to attend the Uncovering Corruption Day. So we are going to be pleased to see you. If you are going to Doha, we hope to see you at this day. Thank you very much for your attention, and please do not hesitate if you have any question.
Thank you so much, Louise. We now want to move on to the final presentation, Mr. Nicholas Pienaar from OECD.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, it's a bit of a challenge. First of all, I'm the last speaker before the coffee break, and I think everybody is dying to go for a coffee. And secondly, a lot has been said already, many excellent presentations, many excellent speakers, so hard to complement. So I will just, so no PowerPoint presentation, we'll just provide a couple of pointers. First, to start with, why is it important from our perspective, the protection of whistleblower? As you may know, in the working group on bribery of the OECD, we're working on the bribery of foreign public officials in international commercial transactions. And this is actually a very complex offense, precisely because of its transnational nature. So it's hard to detect, it's hard to demonstrate, and therefore it's hard to prosecute, and the cases of convictions are unfortunately not so many. So the whistleblower, they really have a key role to play in the detection of foreign bribery offense. So it's certainly an area where we are focusing a lot. And now turning to frameworks for the protection of whistleblower in OECD countries, I would like to pick up on what Dr. Salomon presented when it comes to G20 countries. And he showed in this compendium, and we were very pleased to work with the presidency on this compendium. Dr. Salomon showed that G20 countries have taken important steps to establish clear reporting channels and protection for reporting persons, both in the public and the private sectors. And I must say, from an OECD perspective, this is very much in line with what we are seeing in many of our members of the working group on bribery. They have overall a relatively robust framework for the protection of whistleblower. It's good to have robust frameworks, but it's even better when to implement those frameworks effectively. And this is where clearly there is a gap. We see, including in the members of the working group on bribery, that there is the persistence of significant gaps in making those systems both effective and accessible. And I was really struck by the presentation from our B20 colleagues, and in particular the numbers that were mentioned by the Deputy Chair of the Integrity and Compliance Task Force. Those numbers, they show that whistleblower are still under pressure. They fear retaliation. The reporting channels are too often fragmented, and I think that generally speaking there is uncertainty about whether their reports, the reports made by whistleblower, will reach the right authorities and link to meaningful action. And going back to this issue of foreign bribery, according to OECD reporting, only a very small fraction of foreign bribery schemes resulting in sanctions among working group on bribery members were actually detected by whistleblowers. So it shows that there's still a long way to go, and this leads me to say a few words about the 2021 anti-bribery recommendation, which was mentioned before by Luis Portas as well as by Dr. Salomons. So in fact, the working group on bribery of the OECD recognized this challenge of implementation and included in this 2021 recommendation an extensive and clear guidance for governments on frameworks for reporting foreign bribery and protecting reporting persons. And these recommendations, they complement, they reinforce similar guidance under the NCAC, the resolution 10.8 on the protection of reporting persons, and they are also aligned with the G20 2019 high-level principles. And I will not go through all the recommendations of these instruments, but maybe just to highlight three dimensions where we see, in particular in G20 countries, that there are varying frameworks and where progress would be warranted. The first one is to shift the burden of proof on retaliating persons to prove that adverse actions against a reporting person was not in retaliation for the report, and this is an area where clearly there is room for progress, both in WGP members and in the G20. The second aspect is to prohibit waivers, such as confidentiality agreements that limit whistleblower rights. There again, room for progress. And also, and I will get back to this at the end of my short presentation, review and assess the effectiveness of these frameworks. And also, I should mention that the 2021 recommendation focused very much on the role of technology, which was also very well addressed this afternoon. Let me finish by stressing two important dimensions that should underpin the effectiveness of whistleblower protection frameworks. This is on the one hand the issue of trust, and on the second hand the importance of monitoring and measurement. So let me start with trust. This issue was also very well discussed by our B20 colleagues. There is OECD research that highlights that the primary motivators for individuals to speak up are the assurance and the confidence that their reports will be acted upon, and the understanding that their actions can lead to positive changes. And this belief very much hinges upon an organizational culture of openness beyond the formal safeguards and protections incorporated in legal frameworks. So this issue of trust is absolutely key, and it's actually encapsulated in the Principle 9 of the OECD recommendation on public integrity, which is another important OECD standard. And the OECD has developed a handbook on public integrity that provides practical guidance on fostering trust, openness, highlighting factors such as employee engagement, trustworthy leadership, and addressing barriers of rigid hierarchies that hinder speaking up. OECD research also shows that visible support from management contributes significantly to employee willingness to report concerns. So this culture of trust should also go hand in hand with a culture of continuous improvement. And from that respect, reports should drive action beyond immediate risk mitigation. Lesson learned must feed back into updating policies and processing, ensuring the organization improves over time. And I'd like to mention one interesting example from Australia, where you have this Queensland Ombudsman casebook 2025. So I don't know if our Australian colleague knows that, but it's an interesting register that publishes, in fact, publishes summaries of complaints and resulting recommendations on safety, administrative fairness, and decision-making to help public sector agencies reform policies and procedures. So this is an example of relevant follow-up of recommendation cases and their outcome. I mean, I mentioned the issue of trust, of continuous improvement, but there cannot be continuous improvement if there is no meaningful measurement. And this issue of measurement was mentioned by Dr. Salomon as one avenue for further progress in the G20. And I'd like to mention from that perspective the OECD public integrity indicators that use official government data to assess the effectiveness of countries' anti-corruption and integrity system that was mentioned this morning during the discussion on priority one. Those indicators actually underpin the compendium under priority one. And within the integrity of the justice and disciplinary system data sets, there are specific indicators measuring whistleblower protection in courts and prosecution authorities, including regulatory safeguards, complaints management, and awareness of reporting channels. The data is now being collected and will soon be featured in the forthcoming 2026 Anti-Corruption and Integrity Outlook of the OECD. It will cover the 38 OECD members, but also 20 non-OECD partner countries. And the majority of these countries are actually G20 members, so that will make a contribution to the measurement of effective whistleblower protection. So thank you very much for the opportunity, Madam Chair, and happy to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all our speakers in the last session. But I think it's clear we've all been incredibly focused and we've earned a little caffeine diplomacy now. So let's take a break, and as we say in South Africa, a person is through other people, and what better way than for us to share a conversation over a cup of coffee. So let's take 15 minutes and we'll reconvene after the break. Thank you. I think to be clear, it's 4:10 now, so 15 minutes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're about ready to begin with the final stretch for the afternoon. If we can take our seats. Welcome back. I hope you all enjoyed a taste of South African hospitality during the break. We now get ready to move to the final stretch of today's plenary, where we will explore how whistleblower protection frameworks are being implemented in practice. So if I can ask you to take your seats as I introduce the next set of our speakers for the afternoon. Just give it a few more seconds. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. As we head into the next and final stretch of our plenary, I'm honored to be joined by four very distinguished representatives who bring a wealth of practical and policy expertise. As our first speaker this afternoon, honored to introduce and welcome to the stage Advocate Koleka Klaleka, the Public Protector of the Republic of South Africa.
Thank you very much, Program Director, distinguished members of the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group, esteemed colleagues and partners. Thank you for this opportunity to address at this gathering today, representing the Public Protector South Africa as an institution which in itself has the mandate of anti-corruption. South Africa's 2025 G20 presidency foregrounds the need not just for legislative review, but for institutional and social transformation, echoing the call for inclusive systems, accessible channels, digital reporting tools, and survivor-centered remedies, including legal, financial, and psychosocial support. Whistleblower protection is fundamental in promoting integrity and deterring corruption, advancing public trust, promotion and protection of human and organizational values. Now, the role of the Public Protector in whistleblowing. The Public Protector is a constitutional institution under Chapter 9 with the powers to investigate, report on, and take remedial action. Case law has actually confirmed the Constitution that the power of the Public Protector to take remedial action is binding. This represents a distinctive hybrid model that combines investigative independence, constitutional entrenchment, and binding enforcement powers, a significant departure from the classical Swedish ombudsman institutions. Amongst many enabling legislations, including the Constitution, which empowers the Public Protector to investigate, is the Protected Disclosures Act. Section 8A of this Act designates the public protector as one of the institutions authorized to receive protected disclosures, reports of suspected wrongdoing made by employees or workers, and the binding remedial actions which the public protector has recently upheld by the courts extends this power beyond labor proceedings and affirm the institution's role as a viable, effective avenue for whistleblowers seeking justice and strengthening the anti-corruption arsenal. Now, our contribution in this ecosystem of protecting whistleblowers, our work depends heavily on direct reports from whistleblowers, identification of systemic gaps, and corrective remedials. This broad mandate enables the public protector to address not only clear-cut corruption, but also systemic administrative misconduct, governance failures, and ethical violations that create conditions for corruption, areas often outside the reach of the criminal law enforcement agencies. Chronic mismanagement, waste, and procedural violation, subtle forms of corruptions, which is nepotism, favoritism, abuse of procurement processes, poor or dangerous service delivery, failures in oversight or regulatory capture, human rights abuses, or harassment masked by bureaucracies. As we're all aware that audits and official checks often rely on selected records, while whistleblower accounts reveal lived realities and decision-making cultures that statistics cannot measure. It is therefore critical to have an ecosystem approach where technology is central to access and sharing of information in real time. We utilize technology as an enabler and an enhancer of whistleblower protection. In an era of rapid digital transformation, technology has emerged as a critical enabler and an enhancer of whistleblower protection, addressing many of the structural barriers that have traditionally silenced potential reporters. Organizations using secure digital channels report 4 times more issues and are 10 times more effective at detecting misconduct and fraud early. Beyond reporting, technology enables comprehensive case management, evidence preservation, and multi-agency coordination. Cloud-based systems facilitate secure document sharing among oversight institutions, such as the Public Protector, Auditor General, the SIU, PSC, which are institutions vested with accountability in preventing cases from falling through institutional gaps while maintaining confidentiality and audit trails. Integrated platforms also support survivor-centered remedies, legal resource databases, psychosocial support referrals, and automated notifications ensure whistleblowers receive holistic assistance throughout investigations. For institutions such as these, technology offers transformative opportunities to strengthen both accessibility and responsiveness. The proposed CARA-funded National Integrity Portal envisages an integrated digital platform where citizens can submit complaints online and anti-corruption agencies be provided with actionable data analytics to identify emerging systemic risks. The portal's planned integration of digital forensic services and data analytics tools will enable more sophisticated investigations, detect patterns of corruption, and respond proactively to vulnerabilities before escalations. Yet, as emphasized in the 2024 G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group Accountability Report and by civil society advocates, technology alone is insufficient. Technology must therefore be embedded within an ecosystem of legal protection, institutional accountability, and survivor support, transforming platforms into bridges between courage and justice rather than mere tools. Institutions have to be accessible gateways for citizens at risk, have a wider footprint, providing a geographic and linguistic accessibility for vulnerable communities, no requirements for legal representations, removing financial barriers that often silence whistleblowers, acceptance of anonymous disclosures alongside formal protected disclosures, broadening protection beyond narrow statutory definitions, own motion investigations, enabling proactive interventions where fear prevents formal complaints. The public protector now operates on a case management system, for instance, with a self-service portal. This enables whistleblowers to report without having to utilize an email or face-to-face reporting, which further strengthens anonymity. There's an authorized access to this case management system and the portal to download information, which limits access of the broader community within the public protector. We are also currently exploring with the Auditor General to allow each other's institutions to mine data from one another and consume it using application programming interface or secure file transfer protocol, which will allow integration of systems between the Auditor General and the Public Protector. Institutions must be catalysts for systemic reforms. Beyond individual case resolution, we have to conduct systemic investigations that identify root causes of governance failures, corruption, and administrative misconduct. The state capture investigation, which the Public Protector, by the way, initiated, it clearly outlines how the Public Protector utilized its systemic investigations in order to identify the vast losses which were reported. Now, ongoing systemic work which we do and which was clear was that of the Inokim Gijima Stadium, where we took some of the systemic remedial actions, particularly insisting and enforcing the role of the Financial Intelligence Center to work together with the SAST in assisting in integrity tests as part of the procurement process, particularly of business doing business with the state. This kind of action will actually strengthen the whistleblowers' information that they would forward when reporting. Now, the systemic impact resonates with the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group's emphasis on preventative measures, multi-agency coordination, and the whole-of-government approaches. Outreach and education programs are part of the ongoing collaboration with civil society and international ombudsman institutions, aligning with best practices from the G20, the UN, the AU, and OECD frameworks. Now, looking at some of the gaps which we have identified in the practical implementations, this is very clearly illustrated in the landmark case of Bloem Thuso, who was a senior administrative clerk and a shop steward at Greater Taung local municipality in the Northwest Province, who made a protected disclosure alleging that the acting municipal manager had authorized irregular payment amounting to 36 million rand in contravention of the supply chain management rules. In 17 May 2011, when the Municipal Council resolved to suspend the acting municipal manager based on Bloem's complaint, a messenger arrived at his house to deliver a note suspending him, backdated retrospectively to January 2011. This swift retaliation was followed by Bloem's dismissal. Now, the gaps which we identified, even though we issued a report which was in favor of Bloom was clearly that we didn't have the power to stop retaliation immediately. And further, that we didn't have the power to order compensation. However, the Public Protector's remedial action ordered compensation, full pay during the time, and also the reinstatement of Bloom. Bloom not having access to legal representation and finances, it took him over a decade where the municipality took the Public Protector's report on review. Ultimately, in August 2025, the court dismissed the municipality's application, thus ordering that the Public Protector's remedial actions be implemented in full. Now, like many other whistleblowers who stay for a decade and even more without unemployment and financial destitution, repeated institutional failures have shown in this case emotional and psychological trauma, fragmented and delayed justice, lack of resources. Now, what is it that we are doing? South Africa is obviously reforming its legislation, though it is taking long. Part of the legislative reforms which we have proposed as the Public Protector, which covers the instance in the Bloom judgment, which we've inherently identified, is to be able to stop immediate retaliation on suspended or dismissed employees, prolonged unemployment without income, to be able to order that the employees be reinstated, but also to ensure that these cases are dealt with speedily, and to provide the interim relief, and also to be able to order state institutions to assist with financial and legal representation. These reform will really ensure immediate protection for whistleblowers. It will enforce remedies, but will also ensure that cases are finalized timely and speedily. And also the whistleblowers will be able to access support and resources. What is crucial, particularly for all of us in the country, is that we need to ensure that we adhere to the accountability reports to which we are signatories of the organizations, and we need to ensure a comprehensive legal framework and clear policies, which is something that we are currently busy with in the reforms that we are embarking on. But we also need to ensure that there are robust channels and survivor-centered remedies, effective and proportionate enforcement, no liability in good faith disclosures, ongoing monitoring, evaluation, and reform, and that we need to adhere to the global leadership and good practice. For anti-corruption reforms to be meaningful, whistleblowers must be recognized not as risk, but as lifeblood of accountability, integrity, and democratic renewal. The reform journey ahead is both a national and a global responsibility. In heeding the G20's call, South Africa and all member states must honor the courage of those who speak out by providing timely, effective, and integrated protection, transforming principles into everyday reality and upholding the rule of law. Thank you.
Thank you, Africa Kleka. Our next few speakers will be sharing a short case study from their respective countries. And in the interest of time, if I could ask you to take it at your seats. Our first speaker is Ms. Mihad Al-Sakhair, the General Manager of the General Department of International and Regional Conventions, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We'll then have Mr. Puneet Meena, the Deputy Secretary, Central Vigilance Commission, India, and Mr. Daniel Malmacolino, the Head of the Special Advisory Office for International Affairs, Office of the Comptroller General, Brazil. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to address this distinguished side event today on a topic critical to the global fight against corruption, which is the implementing effective whistleblower protection frameworks. Today I will be presenting the Kingdom's most significant legislative leap in this area, the law for the protection of informants, witness, and expert and victims. This law demonstrates Saudi Arabia's commitment to upholding the highest standards of integrity and transparency. Our efforts are rooted in the objective Saudi Vision 2030, which identifies effective governance and anti-corruption as a fundamental to achieving our national transformation. We recognize a fundamental truth: successful anti-corruption efforts are impossible without the initiative of individuals willing to step forward. The new law provides the most comprehensive and robust legal frameworks to date, ensure that those who expose wrongdoing are protected. The Oversight and Anti-Corruption Authority is responsible for investigating corruption and coordinating with the relevant authorities to ensure this protection is immediately and effectively applied, as well as raising awareness and building capacity in cooperation with international organizations such as the UNODC. The 2024 Protection Law, which is issued by a royal decree, is a groundbreaking in its scope. It does not limit protection to informants. It explicitly covers informant, witness, expert, and victims. Crucially, the law extends the circle of the protected person, their spouses, relatives, and any other close person who might be exposed to danger as a result of the reporting. The law's mandate is clear: to secure individuals against all forms of harm, including material, moral, and physical damage, and protection against criminal and civil liabilities. However, protection comes with a responsibility. It's firmly dependent on the report being made in a good faith. The law will not cover those who report are made with malice, gross negligence, or knowingly false information. The operational arm of this law is the protection program administered by a specialized center within the Public Prosecution Office. Protection is not one-size-fits-all measures. It's determined based on an assessment of the individual's risk level. The measures available are extensive. For the physical safety, the law provides personal security and home protection. For professional and personal life, the law ensures identity concealment with a strict prohibition on the disclosure of personal data or location in official and judicial records. In case of extreme threat, the law offers relocation, facilitating both temporary and permanent changes of the residence, including movement to another city. And finally, the law provides essential welfare support, including legal advice and crucial psychological and social counseling. A key feature demonstrating the modernity of our framework is the innovative use of technology to ensure confidentiality, especially during sensitive stages like the investigation or trial. The law explicitly authorizes measures to fully conceal the identity of the protected person during the delivery of evidence. This is achieved through two powerful mechanisms. First, voice alteration using electronic means to modify the voice of the informant or witness, making them unrecognizable. Second, facial Concealment, employing technology to conceal the facial features during any communication or judicial appearance. These measures ensure that even when an informant must interact with legal proceedings, their anonymity and thus their security is maintained at all times, removing any risk of identification by the accused or their associates. I think it's not working. Next slide, please. Thank you. The laws send message to employees and officials. Retaliation is illegal, unacceptable, and punishable. It strictly prohibits any action aimed at punishing any individual for their cooperation, including termination or any arbitrary disciplinary action. Furthermore, for employees, the program has the authority to intervene and coordinate a safe exit or transfer. It facilitates a temporary or permanent transfer to a different workplace or assists in securing alternative employment, ensuring that the person's professional life is not destroyed. Next slide, please. To ensure the effectiveness of this framework, the law introduces severe and targeted penalties for violations. For those who attempt to intimidate or interfere with the protected person through a force or violence or threats or bribery, the penalty is imprisonment for up to 3 years and fine up to 500,000 riyal. The law extended the liability to the legal persons. Private sector entities can face a fine of up to 5 million riyal or a ban on contracting with government authorities, holding organizations accountable for action of their employees. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the 2024 Protection Law is a foundational element of Saudi Arabia's new culture of integrity, establishing a comprehensive government-backed system for the protection of whistleblowers. The robust framework is designed to protect individuals who report corruption crimes, ensuring their safety and encouraging greater transparency across all sectors. It enhanced the kingdom's abilities to combat corruption by fostering public participation and protecting individuals who report corruption crimes, thereby building a transparent society. This robust framework directly supports Vision 2030 by strengthening accountability, improving institutional effectiveness, and creating vibrant society and thriving economy. We are committed to building a transparent and accountable society, and this law ensures that the courage to report is met with the guarantees of protection. Thank you.
We will now have Ms. Puneet Meena.
Can I have the presentation? Okay. Start the slide. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Puneet Meena. I'm Deputy Secretary in Central Vigilance Commission of Government of India. And I'll be talking about India's experience over 2 decades on whistleblower protection and other practical implementation of that. So first to define the framework in India, how it is. So it's a separate framework for public entities and private entities. For public entities, there is a dedicated framework which works in this regard. And it's a 2004 notified resolution by Government of India, whereas in private sector, there are multiple guidelines which cater to whistleblower protection. There are market regulations guidelines, and there are corporate governance acts and requirements in Companies Act as well. For this presentation, I will limit myself to the public entities, and I will discuss on the PIT-P resolution, which caters to public entities. Public interest disclosure and protection of informers, that is what PIT-P is. It came into being in 2004 following a writ petition being heard by Supreme Court and the directive of Supreme Court. So under PIT-P resolution, any government servant and any other person or NGO can also file a complaint. If there is a corruption or a misuse of office has to be informed, a whistleblower can take action on that. And the complaint can directly be reported to Central Vigilance Commission, which is the centralized dedicated agencies. This is where we see the Indian framework works very well, that there is this centralized agency which all overlooks each and every complaint and overlooks the framework and the improvements required in the framework. Over the 10 years of the initial working of the framework in 2013, it was realized that there are multiple extended hands of the Central Vigilance Commission. There are about thousands and chief vigilance officers, which we have in various government agencies. We use them, and they were defined as designated authorities to receive all these whistleblower complaints as well, and to handle the monitoring of these complaints. Now, to talk about different aspects of PIT-P resolution, which caters to whistleblower framework in India. First, I start with good faith or reasonable ground to believe. It is not expressly defined in our resolution that has to be filed if you have a good faith or a reasonable ground to believe. The focus is on the content and the factuality of the disclosure. It further caters to the broadest possible range of reporting person. Third-party reporting is also possible in this. Work-based relationships are regardless of this fact that there is a work relationship which is already ended, any person can report a complaint in PIT-P resolution. There is no requirement under PIT-P wherein the complainant is required to first exhaust the internal reporting channels. The complainants can directly report and even approach the centralized designated agency for this. For this, there is a dedicated confidential section in the central agencies which deals with all these complaints. Each and every complaint is dealt by that particular section of the commission. The identity is kept secret by parallel processing of these files, and at the same time, a unique key is provided to the complainant to check the monitoring of the status of these complaints as well. I will be discussing all these handling mechanisms when I discuss the protection provided by PIT-P against identity disclosure. Central agency is body capable to take necessary action as deemed fit on these whistleblower complaints. Apart from asking chief vigilance officers for investigation and report and send action taken reports on each complaint, if required be, the central agency has powers to direct independent agencies as well to report on matters of whistleblower complaints. In PIT-P awareness, apart from regular capacity building programs to raise awareness, Central Vigilance Commission observes Vigilance Awareness Weeks, during which ministries, department, public sector enterprises organize activities like circulation of PIT-P posters in regional languages, ethics and whistleblower right workshops are held, and maintenance of dedicated PIT-P portals and prominently displaying notice board to potential informants. In this regard, I would want to mention one point. In March, in Cape Town, we got an opportunity to showcase the various activities taken against anti-corruption initiatives during Vigilance Awareness Week. And today, as I had Vigilance Awareness Week's value in promoting PIT-P resolution on whistleblower framework, I I would want to share that today is also the first day of our Vigilance Awareness Week for this year. And at 11 a.m. in the morning, there were about all the central agencies, they took integrity pledge. And all the numbers are still to be confirmed, but it is said to be that about 3 to 4 million citizens have taken integrity pledge this morning. In 2023, we were introduced during Vigilance Awareness Week various videos and ran ad campaigns to promote PIT-P resolution and whistleblower framework. All the organization ran different campaigns in their organization to promote the same. This helps us build organizational culture, and in past, even embassies have shared us visuals where they have put posters in their offices. As designated agency for PIT-P, the Commission quarterly receives reports from all these central government organizations through Chief Vigilance Officers, which includes information on complaints received under PIT-P and action taken on the same. All these efforts over the years and the data collect tells us that there has been a significant improvement and increase in the number of whistleblower complaints. And in last 4 years itself, we have seen a 4 times increase in the whistleblower complaints. Now, I would be talking about different protections which are available under PIT-P. To start with, the most critical one is the against identity disclosure. PIT-P complaints can only be sent physically by post. They have to be superscribed on closed envelopes with PIT-P. And over 2 decades of this experience, in 2022, we realized that the first place where the complaint is registered, the name is registered of the person is at the postal departments. So in 2022, directives are issued to all postal units not to take the name or the address of the complainant. They have to be dummy names created for that. That has, I hope, has improved the identity disclosure issues. As dedicated confidential units have been put in place in the central vigilance agencies, all complaints are processed by these units. In case complaints which meet the criteria for being considered as PIT-P complaints, the confirmation is sought from the complainant. If complaint contains details due to which confidentiality regarding his identity or her identity can be compromised, then these complaints are returned to back to the complainant and to read after these complaints. All the mass complaints are sent to the screening committee, which consists of senior higher officials. There's a parallel file which is processed for this regard, and a unique key for monitoring the status of these complaints is provided to the complainant. If the identity of informant is disclosed in spite of the designated agency's directions, appropriate actions may be initiated against the person or agency making such disclosures. Second protection which is available to the whistleblower is against harassment or victimization, as highlighted in Article 33 of UNCAC as well. A request for protection of PIT-P complaint is received from in the centralized designated agencies where they are scrutinized at the apex level. This again highlights that any protection, if required, has to come to the centralized agency. Centralized agency looks into it, and the apex level itself decides the fate of it. The designated agency may, in some cases, ask the comments of the chief vigilance officer, that is a vigilance head of this particular organization, on harassments. As all these protection matters are supposed to be sensitive, these again have to be on closed envelopes, have to be dealt by a confidential branch, and have to have superscribed as PIT-P complaint or issues. The CVOs, the chief vigilance officers in the organization, are interested to ensure that no punitive action is taken by any concerned administrative authority against any person or perceived grounds, suspicion of being a whistleblower. The third protection available to is against the threat of life. The Commission, after receipt of representation from the whistleblower about threat to life, takes up the matter with the central ministry, which is Ministry of Home Affairs in our case, for threat assessment. If the threat assessment is established, then central ministry is the nodal agency to undertake responsibility of providing security cover to the persons. It is seen that on the advice of central ministry, state governments, UTs appoints nodal officers, and the details are furnished to centralized agency, designated agency, which is CVC in this case, the commission, and it is done by MHA, the Ministry of Home Affairs. The last protection available is against motivated or vexatious complaint. In case the designated agency finds the complaints to be motivated or vexatious, the designated agency shall be at liberty to take appropriate actions. In this regard, there are certain limitations when you want to provide protections where anybody can complain on any aspect. There has to be some limitations. So in this Indian framework, anonymous complaints are to be excluded from scope of providing protection under FITP framework. This is not to discourage the reporting, but rather to uphold the integrity of the process and prevent misuse of it. As because in past experience, we have realized that there have been cases where employees have retaliated. If there is an administrative action was taken by the organizer against them, they would come up with the whistleblower complaints which has been dealt with the administrative action against them. Hence, by requiring an identified and fact-based submission, the framework promotes accountability while enabling the competent authority to take meaningful actions on substantiated concerns. India's framework thus enables and encourages direct reporting, builds trust by providing the meaningful protections, and also promote awareness. These efforts over the years has helped us increase the whistleblower numbers of complaints which we receive. This is all I'll have on this. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now have Mr. Daniel Mocolino.
Hi. Well, good afternoon, distinguished colleagues and partners. It is an honor to be here today representing the Brazil's Office of the Controller General, and also to be sharing a little bit of our experience on this very important topic, which is how to advance whistleblower protection and through integrity by design. And okay, could we have the presentation on the screen, please? There you go. Just to give a quick overview of our approach, first and foremost, we think that whistleblower protection is actually a foundation for trusting public institution, and it's not only a compliance requirement. That's why we take it so seriously. And a very important pillar to us is that protection must be built into systems and process, and not only be part of normative acts or abstract policies. And another important pillar is that reports should be easy and fast to make, and in order to not only facilitate an early intervention, but also to engage to help to incentivize reporting. So our approach at the Office of the Controller General tries to integrate law, technology, and process through our digital platform, which is Fala BR. For the ones who are not proficient in Portuguese yet, means Pick Up BR. So first, let's start with a quick overview of our legal framework. Our framework tries to connect robust rights protection with mandatory institutional accountability through a layered legal approach. As you can see, we have two legal instruments and two of the main infralegal instruments on the screen. And the main takeaway is that those instruments guarantee that whistleblower protection is a legal obligation for all federal agencies, and they're not an option. So the legal architecture was designed to provide a safe environment for citizens and civil servants to speak up and make reports. And as we have as a general rule or our main guiding principle, whistleblower identity protection must be preserved. But also we have to have ways that we have to guarantee justice and also institutional accountability. And for that we have three exceptions for that main guiding principle. The first one is voluntary consent, which is pretty obvious. The user can just mark the checkbox in the system and allows for their identity to be revealed. The second one is when we have an overriding public interest or an essential investigative need in a judicial or administrative proceeding. And third, when we have a formal judicial order told us to do so to reveal the whistleblower identity. And it's very important to say that the CGU has a very important role in guaranteeing that no whistleblower will get retaliation. And CGU is in charge of investigating and punishing if there is any case of retaliation against whistleblowers, which aims to provide the secure environment for whistleblowers to report. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit of FalaBR, which is our unified national digital platform. And it was designed and it is continuously improved in order to ensure secure and a user-friendly reporting for both citizens and civil servants. And the first main feature is that it is a central hub for reporting misconduct across all federal agencies. Its use is mandatory for all federal agencies. And we have that personal data is protected from the moment of entry, guaranteeing an effective case management without revealing the whistleblower identity. We also have zero trace reporting, which means that anonymous reporting is fully supported. And the system is configured not to share IP data or identifying metadata from the whistleblower. And last, and definitely not least, probably the most important thing of this slide is users' participation. Last year, the CGU held a public consultation to improve the system subjects in order to simplify the selection of the topic when the user is making the report. Every time that a user wants to make a report, they have to select a topic and then rewrite their report. And we had a lot of subjects, a lot of topics, and the main objective of this public consultation was to improve that list of topics and listen to the user, listen to the citizens, and try to understand what is their understanding of the topics and how we could improve the communication in those topics. Also, about users' participation, currently there is a working group which is assessing how to make the form even more accessible and engaging for the users. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about our data governance in FalaBR, which is aimed to build digital confidence. And the first important point is that reports and attachments undergo a two-step automated process, which separates identity from content at the source. We have an AI robot which reads and identifies personal information or information that could somehow identify that person, and it is identified and removed, redacted from the documents, either the report itself, the form, or any attachments. And we have encryption and multi-factor authentication as mandatory for all complaint databases. Also, if we are to reveal the identity of the whistleblower, it is required a written justification based on those three exceptions that I told earlier, and that written justification is going to be recorded in the system forever. And finally, of course, we have a continuous oversight of all those features, which is made by the CGU. So we don't, of course, technology is very important. Those digital tools, they help us to improve precision and efficiency, but we don't leave technology alone. And we have always the principle of having human oversight to guarantee that the final decision is always overseen by a human. So I'm going to just say a little bit of some of the main features of the human oversight because it's actually a really huge set of actions that is taken in this case. But first and foremost, we have this principle of minimal exposure, which means that we're going to share strictly what is necessary for the investigation. Also, we have attached masking as the model just shared by India. We have sensitive attachments that are systematically masked or even removed by the ombudsman officers in order to prevent any type of re-identification. And finally, we have redacted summaries, which are manually made, elaborated by the ombudsman officers, and then those summaries are sent with the report and eventually any attachments to the investigative bodies. And all of this work, fortunately, has yielded very good results to the CGU and to the Brazilian public in general. Today, we have more than 9 million users on FalaBR and over 3,200 agencies which are part of FalaBR. And this number of agencies, of course, is more than we have in the federal government because we have also state and local governments which are taking part of FalaBR as well. And we have thousands of reports safely processed through FalaBR annually, which indicate a high utilization and trust by citizens and civil servants. So far, we have no confirmed identity breaches since the system's creation, which also reaffirms the security by design approach so far. And the Brazilian model is currently referenced by other Latin American countries, which are now developing their own integrity systems. And finally, Brazil was possibly cited amongst the 22 countries that responded to the G20 questionnaire, standing out for its robust integrity policies. And to wrap up, technology protects data and people protect integrity. We know how much valuable AI tools and digital tools are to improve our efficiency, but it is the people who design those tools and also who are responsible, who should be accountable for the final decisions. So Brazil's experiences demonstrate how embedding digital tools, users' participation, and a strong legal framework create a sound ecosystem of integrity and public trust for protecting whistleblowers. I am at your disposal for any questions or for any cooperation, anything that you're interested in. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all our speakers for sharing such rich and practical insights. We've seen today that it's a commitment to transparency and protection is truly universal. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the final session of the afternoon, and I thank you for bearing with us as we're a little over time. But as we look to the next conversation, we bring together technology, ethics, and humanity to explore what the future of whistleblowing might look like in an era shaped by artificial intelligence. So it's an exciting session, and I'm honored to welcome Marlene Pappas, the B20 South Africa Integrity and Compliance Task Force Knowledge Partner, and Lebahan Bouchel, Chief Ethics Officer, First Rand Group.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I realize we are the last session before the closing and a wonderful dinner, but it's my privilege to explore one of the most pressing and probably one of the most promising frontiers in integrity, how humans and AI can work together to fight corruption. The AI conversation is not about replacing human judgment. It's about how technology can amplify integrity, not automate it. Joining me is the Chief Ethics Officer at First Rand and a member of our Integrity and Compliance Task Force, Lebogang. It's a privilege to have you here. First Rand and FNB is already starting to apply AI and analytics to strengthen governance and anti-corruption systems. From your perspective in banking, how has the anti-corruption landscape changed in the past few years with the rise of digital transformation?
Thank you, and greetings to everyone. I think it's changed vastly, exponentially, in fact, with the advent of new technologies. We cannot understate the impact, the change. Things like deep learning, AI, really building and providing that capacity for greater visibility, for tasks being completed at a greater velocity and speeds that a human cannot manage, or our human capital and human resources staff cannot. So the landscape is being changed, yes, absolutely, by digital transformation, but I think we also need to keep in mind that combined with that, there's really this alignment on the vision to, in a sustainable manner, tackle corruption. So collective action and really those concepts also gaining momentum. I think also if we just sketch it from the start, so the brief and the ask was to really take these abstract concepts and just make them practical. So if we sketch it from the start, in all our lifetimes, we started with Web 1, really read-only internet. And what that meant for me, in fact, my memory is of a cream screen with a picture of two telephones and ... linking them, and this constant dial-up noise. Sometimes you dialed up. So accessibility was a challenge in those early days. And then we moved on to participative social media. And in that era, you see things like Facebook, Instagram, and the real change that it brings there is, again, hyper-transparency, which from an anti-corruption perspective is really beneficial. We've had incidents in South Africa, for instance, even recently, where individuals who post their lavish lifestyles on social media, or others within their networks do so, are exposed, where previously you may have needed lifestyle audits, and even they may not have detected some incidents of misappropriation, etc. But again, this age of social web has changed the fight against corruption. Now we're at a time really where there's agentic, generative technology. It has the ability to read, to write, to articulate. And in fact, it's challenging our own concepts and understanding of what intelligence is. So I think exciting times, but as I say, exponential changes in the landscape, yeah, very exciting times.
And do you see the AI as an enabler of integrity, or do you find that it's introducing new vulnerabilities?
I think it absolutely is an enabler. Just referring to the examples that I've just used, a nice segue into proving anecdotally that it is absolutely an enabler of integrity. I think what's also important to keep in mind, though, is a balanced view, right? Because the application of AI can have and can introduce vulnerabilities, as you ask. So we don't quite understand how deep learning works or produces its results, rather, let me say. So deep learning uses these layers of neural networks, and the sheer size of which just makes it difficult for us to see or to wrap our heads around notions of explainability, for instance. So these kinds of things they introduce a measure of vulnerability, but also massive opportunity to act responsibly, right? So we can heap huge rewards from AI, but let's be responsible. Let's acknowledge and grapple with the challenges or potential vulnerabilities, and let's ensure that it ultimately that enabler, and not shy away from use, adoption, and deployment.
And if an AI system raises a red flag, what human interventions are involved? And I guess leading on to that is, how do you build trust amongst employees and amongst executives in the AI solution outcomes?
I think, again, bringing in the lived experience from a First Rand, FNB, and the broader group perspective. Being one of Africa's largest financial institutions, it's been really important for us to rely on governance. And so I'd illustratively respond by mentioning the First Rand ethical use of data framework. I'm intimately acquainted with it because it's a framework that the function I lead is a custodian of. And yes, it addresses data. But that takes us back to the starting blocks, right? Because data is a vital input into AI systems. And so if you start there, it's consumed by large language models. We start at the beginning. We ensure agentic AI and deep learning systems have reduced probability of incorrect flags. We ensure our data quality, data bias is addressed, and really ensuring that we govern and mitigate risk right from the beginning and throughout the use of AI systems.
And I mean, we just heard the member from India mention data governance. Do you believe that the regulatory frameworks are keeping pace with the changes that are required, especially in countries like South Africa, where data governance and AI policies are still evolving?
So I am now an ethics practitioner, but in my previous life I was a legal functionary. I have experience in compliance and risk management, and I mention this because I think it stands me in good stead to then opine on where the regulation is keeping pace. I think it is a truth that we all cannot deny that innovation precedes the regulation, not the other way around. So I wouldn't necessarily say lag, but one must follow the other. From a South African perspective, while we may not have legislation or regulation that speaks specifically to some elements of AI systems and some of the elements that are related, there is legislation that informs how we develop the outcomes that are required, and examples are Protection of Personal Information Act, which speaks to data privacy. We have the ECTA, Electronic Communications and Transactions Act, and other various pieces of legislation where you say, if you look at them holistically, they are rails. But I think importantly, from a business perspective, important from a corporate responsibility perspective, to say what rails, while we wait for further regulation, are we putting in place for ourselves? Again, what ethical business conduct outcomes are we ensuring are a result of our deployment and use of AI systems and other forms of digital technology? So there's that opportunity right now, one, to self-regulate in a sense on the basis of ethics, the human element in interpreting what we can and cannot do, but then also it presents an opportunity because we can now, at this juncture, inform what regulation and what policy ultimately looks like.
Perfect. And I think you've mentioned the aspects around the training of the AI systems. How do we ensure fairness and accountability in terms of how the AI systems are trained and deployed within organizations?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. But to answer it briefly, I mean, I'll go back to that point around end-to-end assessment of the risks. And we spoke or alluded to bias, for instance. Really just ensuring that we orientate ourselves around the different types of risks in even just around a simple concept or seemingly simple concept such as bias. So this applying the same diligence not only to potential negative bias that results from data, but so historical bias that sits in your data sets, representation bias, what data is available, what was the sample, again, aggregation, how are we applying that, does that lead to false conclusions? But there are other aspects, right? So there's algorithmic bias. How long has a model been trained? Is it sufficient? There's evaluation bias, right? So we say this is a safeguard evaluation, but what is that fairness benchmark that we test against? And I think these are the robust and very interesting and exciting conversations that we're having right now. But again, important for us to unpack and to arrive at a landing that is comfortable for us as organizations, but that also takes into account our different stakeholder groupings, our customers, society, and the impact that that has there. Because AI is not just technology, it's a socio-technical issue. And so again, that marrying of the human and the technology, which is really at the heart of our conversation, being vitally important.
And I guess, as you say, there's a lot happening right now.
Indeed.
So if we took the crystal ball and looked 5 years ahead, what would a successful human-AI partnership look like in the fight against corruption?
I think that looks like transparency. It looks like anti-corruption efforts from a human perspective being focused on things like strategy, culture, values, and then being complemented by the AI, the technology, handling the data, handling the voluminous tasks, looking at deep connections and cross-jurisdictional transactions, all of that hard labor, let's call it, being carried out by the AI and augmenting it with the human lens, with the ethical and responsible business conduct lens.
And you've spoken quite a bit about culture as well.
Yes.
What do you think needs to happen in policy, collaboration, culture to make the vision real around using AI to fight corruption?
I think culture is a cornerstone because we can have policies, but implementation and the will to take that one to its proper, sort of implemented as it's intended, and even aspirationally to say, where do we take the conversation further? That's a function of culture. So it's about the frameworks. We've talked about governance. We've talked about policy being in place at an organizational level, also ensuring that we create rails where there may be potential gaps. But for me, I think it's important to lift all of that off the page, to make it real for people. Again, taking the abstract, making it practical, and continuing the advocacy within our individual organizations to ensure that the conversation doesn't die down. And that's at the heart of creating a culture around this.
Yeah, I think lastly, Lebogang, is what advice would you give to an organization that is embarking on the journey in terms of AI and the integrity thereof and how you implement that successfully?
I think if you're in the starting blocks, important to really lean on this concept of collective wisdom. And I think we've chatted about it, it's come up in a lot of the discussions today, and that cannot be underscored, the importance thereof, or overemphasized. So collective action, the power of collaboration, this was really a key part of the discussions as well as the task force developed and progressed the recommendations. So if you're at the starting blocks, look at things not as obstacles that are insurmountable, but really maintain momentum, engage with those who are further on the journey than you are, who've had the experience and maybe learned some hard lessons that you can benefit from and make your journey that much easier.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you, Lebogang and Marlene. Certainly a fascinating discussion. I think just a reminder, technology may be the frontier, but humanity will still remain the compass. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the close of the plenary session, and it's been my absolute honor to have addressed you and engaged you this afternoon. We will, I'm sure, continue the day's discussion this evening at the official welcome reception, where we'll keep exchanging ideas and, of course, enjoy more of our South African hospitality. A bit of logistics. I understand there will be shuttles from the Kruger, from this venue to the Kruger station, where our beautiful venue has been set up for dinner. They had aimed to kick off at 6 p.m., so I think we are slightly just on the mark for dinner. Looking forward to engaging you all there further. Want to give a big thanks once again to all our speakers, our guests, and our delegates for contributing to such an insightful and collaborative afternoon. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the B20 actions relating to this subject on whistleblower protection. It's a very important subject. If we fail to put measures in place to protect whistleblowers, we are likely to affect our fight against corruption negatively. So we really appreciate the interaction, the insights. We will certainly take those. We finalize some of our reporting documents. So, colleagues, we have reached the end of the day. I've just received a logistical message that changes the start time tomorrow to 9:30. Tomorrow, please, let's start at 9:30. We just want to make sure that we don't have a repeat of this morning, but just to make sure that the logistics are really taken care of. Tomorrow, 9:30. Thank you very much.